Welcome, guys, to another presentation, Up to the Time. Today, we're going to be looking at material indication symbols. So what does this mean? What does the term material symbols mean? Let's go here and let's read from here. Material symbols are used to represent materials or contents on floor plans, elevations, and detailed drawings. Different symbols may be used to represent the same item on these drawings. The outline of the drawing may be filled in with a material symbol to show what the object is made of. So let's look at the chart here that we're going to be referencing. And we can see that the chart has 4 main columns. The first column deals with the material. And in that column, we will have wood, brick, stone, concrete block, earth, glass, insulation. And when you go over to the second column, it deals with how the material would look like in the plan view. And then the third column indicates how the material will look like in the elevation view. And then this fourth column, how the material will look like in a section view. So we're going to be looking at each material here, and we're going to be looking at it in all 3 views, plan, section, and elevation. And also we're going to be looking at the material, how it looks like in reality, the true representation of the material. And then we're going to be looking at the symbolic representation of the material. So let's, without any further ado, this is the chart that we're going to be referencing. And let's look at wood. So let's get this thing started. So let's look at wood here now. Now, this is what wood looks like in its natural form. This is wood. I guess most people are familiar with this building material. Wood comes from trees. Now let's go back over here. How will we represent this wood now in elevation? In elevation, this is how it would look like. And in section, we would have a big X in your framing or the finish. And yeah. So let's go now and try to represent this. So I'm going to, and we are going to be focusing on wood. All right. Okay, good. So I'm going to leave that like that. And now let's get to the elevation. How will we represent this in elevation? So I'm going to go over into my EX walls, my outline, and let's represent this in elevation. So the first thing is I can draw a rectangle. I can draw another rectangle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put our representation in here, in these rectangles. All right, so let's look at it from the siding. Meaning, in case you want, just say you wanted to express a piece of, if you want to express a wooden finish on the side of your house, how would that look? So first thing, we need to go into our hatch pattern, and we need to search through some patterns till we find a pattern that matches the siding. So that's what we're going to be doing. I think I found one here. So I'm going to change the scale. I'm going to probably use about 50 for that. No, I think 50 is too small, so I'll use 75. 75 looks good, but I want this to be solid lines, continuous lines. I don't want them to be any broken lines. So I'm just looking through the patterns. Let's see what I'm looking for. And if I don't see what I'm looking for there, use another pattern. So like user, I think this is going to work for me. Yeah. Oh, there. Okay, I think this works well. But before I go any further, I'm going to put this into its proper layer. So I'm going to put all the hatching into the hatching layer. So let's go, all the hatches, sorry, into the hatching layer, right? Or into the hatch layer. So I'll just place the material into the hatch layer. And now let's go to what this will look like from a panel. I'm afraid we might not find a material to match what we see here on the chart. We might not find a pattern to match that material. So in a case like this, I would normally create my material by using a spline, sorry. And yeah, so that's what I'm gonna have to do here for this one. So let's go to that. Let me show you how to use that. SPL. That brings up the command for spline. Activate it by pressing enter. And I'm just going to come here and I'm going to try to draw this pattern. So I'm going to take off my ortho F8. That is it. So I'm just going to try to draw the pattern in here to represent the hatch. Generally, what I would do is I would just look for another hatch. Saying that I'm doing it for educational purposes, I'm just going to show you all another option you can explore if you really wanted to get the hatches close to the pattern seen in the chart here. Now I'm going to trim this because I don't want it to go outside of this side of the square or the shape that I'm using. So now that I've trimmed that, now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to place this into my hatch layer because I'm treating this as a hatch pattern. Okay, so that's it there, that's panel, and that's siding. All right, so that's what it would look like in elevation. And let's move on now to section. So I'm going to draw a rectangle again. REC to bring it rectangle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this because I want this both rectangles to be the same size. And all this is an X for this framing one. That's an X there. And represent that by an X. I'm going to put that into the hatch layer, yeah. And then this finishes now. Now, I don't think we're going to be able to get this pattern. So I might have to use the SPL spline and create the pattern myself. And if you probably want to know what these are, you would realize if we go back to the image of the wood, what I'm doing is I'm putting in the wood grains on this side here. These grains that you see, I'm trying to represent those on the material. I mean, it doesn't have to be as exact as you see, just need to hint it. That's what I'm doing. Usually what I would do is if you don't have a particular pattern, I would just find a pattern from the library and use. I wouldn't generally make my pattern unless it's a case where it's a one-off situation where I can make this pattern and I won't have to make it again. You know, that's when I would make it. But if I have to hatch a whole big area, I generally would find a different hatch pattern. So that's the finish and that's the framing in section. So I'm going to just place some labels over here before we go to the next material at this moment. So we can just have this organized. So I'm going to place a label there. And that label for there would be siding. And then this one here would be panel. All right, so let me just bring this around here, here, and here. All right, so this is a panel. This is framing. And then this last one here will be finish. All right, so that's the first one done. Let me just, so now let's move on to the second material. We're going to be now looking at brick. So let's go down here into the folder and we're going to look for an image of a brick. So here are some bricks. These are what bricks look like. And these are bricks that are used to create a wall, to form a wall, either a guard wall or exterior wall or even an internal wall. That's the material that we use. We use brick, and then this is the concrete here in between the cracks, or in between the bricks, the different bricks. You use concrete to bond the bricks together. So that's what a brick looks like. Also, here's another view of a brick, and also an air brick. Also, when the brickwork is finished, this is how it will look like. So we get the drift of what a brick looks like now. So let's move on now to representing this. So I'm going to draw two small rectangles here, REC. And most of these hatches will be represented within either a rectangle or within a square. So it's not going to be too much. Draw that, and then I'm going to copy that now because I want to get two of those in here. All right. So now what does the face look like in plan? So I'm going to find a hatch, and I can even use the same hatch user. And then what I can do is I can change the angle from 0. Let's try 30. Okay, I think that looks good. I'm just going to change the scale to 150. Yeah, I think that even looks better. And I'm going to, of course, place this into the hatch layer. Good. And now I'm going to do the common face. The common face seems to be similar pattern, but only thing larger. So I'm going to put that at 300. Yeah. And then, of course, place this into the hatch pattern. I'm just organizing this better on the screen. Okay, good. This one goes to the word face, F-A-C-E. That's on the face, and this is common. Then in elevation, face or common is represented by just these lines there. So I'm going to create a rectangle. REC is the command. Create the rectangle there. And I'm going to put my hatch in here. And the hatch pattern I'm going to be using is, let's explore some more hatch patterns and see what we have here. I like this one. I'm going to put back the angle to 0. And I'm going to put back the scale to 100. Let's see. This is not exactly what I want. I don't want a pattern that has these small dashes in there. So I'm going to look for another pattern. I'm going to work with this pattern here, but I'm going to choose, I'm going to reduce the scale. So that's about 50. Yeah. I gotta do the whole process over again. Which pattern was it? No, it's not this pattern, but I just threw a pattern in there, got a scale, and now I can come back and readjust it. That's something that I normally do. I just get a random pattern into the box, and then I come back and then I set the pattern to whatever. There are many different ways to join in this program. I'll stick to this one. It's my final decision there. So let's move now. The good thing about putting in hatch patterns is most times when you create a hatch pattern, you also have a text. You also have some notes to go with the pattern so that if a person is looking at the drawing and they're not able to identify the pattern because they don't know the symbols, they can actually read. So let's say, for example, if someone were looking at this wood and they see that this is the finish, they might be able to look at it, and then after reading the word finish and see that this represents wood, it might then click and make sense to them, like, right, this is how a wood will look if you were to cut through it. So sometimes having some notes goes a long way. Now, when you see this here, same as plan view, we're not going to bother to reproduce the plan view over here. We're just going to put the note same as plan view, right? So I'm just going to grab a note and I'm just going to place that note in here and then just call it same as plan view. Same as plan view. Now, so we have finished two. We have finished brick and we have finished wood. Now let's go on to stone. What does stone look like when we just think of stone? When we think of stone, what comes to mind? Stones like that. That's stones in its raw format. But then after, there's another way we can look at stones. We can look at stone as a material, a finish. And let's see if we have any representations here. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go on to Google and let's look for a stone finish. Stone finish. Yeah, and this is what we have here. So these are the different finishes and the different, sorry, these are the different stone finishes here. And as we can see, the stone comes in different colors. But basically, this is what a stone finish would look like. So now let's go and represent this in AutoCAD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the boxes here and the notes and then just copy them down here. Yeah. So I think this note will be something called cut. And this would be rubble. So for cut, we're not going to place anything in there. We leave it blank. But for rubble, we need to put a hatch in there. So let me just go over to my hatch layer one time. Now H for hatch, that brings up my hatch menu. As I usually do, I place in any hatch in there. I usually close it and then I go back. The reason I do that is because sometimes when you're trying to select another pattern, you have the hatch option still open, and if you click anywhere on the screen, the pattern, another pattern will go there, and it can sometimes be very clumsy, and you might just be clicking and clicking patterns into squares, whereas you would have already finished assigning your pattern to the square and you want to get out. So that's why I always assign it, get out, and then revisit it to edit the pattern. Right? So now I can click different places on the screen freely without having to worry about that pattern appearing in a spot where I didn't intend for it to be. That's why. Yeah, I think this is it. That pattern there. Let's go 100. Oh, this pattern might have to bump up to 1,000 for this particular pattern. Yeah. This is how I'm going to represent the rubble. Okay, that looks good. So let's move on now to what will happen when we look at it now from the side. Create some rectangles here. Actually, I'm just going to use this shape up here. Copy this down. And I'm just going to copy this across, right? Good. So now I'm going to change the word here. Again, this goes to cut. This goes to rubble. So let's see if we have this pattern available. If we have this pattern available, we'll be able to use it. If not, let me just open this larger so we can see more things as I'm searching. This is the closest thing I'm seeing here. Let's look through these somewhere. We have gravel. And unfortunately, we do not have that pattern. And if you don't have that pattern, I would encourage someone to use another pattern and just label it. Even in an exam or in a case where you really need to put a pattern in there, I would encourage someone to use another pattern and label it. I personally wouldn't waste time creating that pattern. Yeah. So I'm going to work with this here. And I'm going to call that cut. Now let's go over now to rubble and see what we can find. So place that in there as usual. Place any pattern, then I go back and I edit. This allows me more freedom. Now, see, these are the standard patterns that come with the program. I'm going to use the gravel one for rubble and just leave it there. Yeah. And now when we go over to the section, let's show what this will look like. So we need to create some rectangles over here. And this pattern for the rubble is the same pattern that was used in the plan. So I'm going to just reuse that. Match drop, MA to match drop the properties from here over to there, transfer that. And then this cut pattern just looks like some small dots in there. So just draw a pattern in there, and I come back and I edit it. Go back in there and I'll be able to edit the hatch pattern. And just look for some dots. It should be fairly easy. You can use, I'm going to use air sand. And I'm going to change the scale to 200. 200 looks good. Yeah, I'm satisfied with 200. Now I'm going to place these outlines now into the outline there. Right. So now what's missing? We need to get a text in here. And the way I've drawn it, I don't think I've given myself any space at the bottom. So let me just draw a line. So let's make sure, and I'm going to stretch this now. Stretch this whole box back to this point. So I'm going STR for stretch, STR, enter, stretch, select this like that, yeah, enter, and then just grab that and pull that up to there. I'm going to also pull back the pattern. Good. Now I can delete that. I can now bring my word, my text pops over, and this should work. All right, good. All right, cut rubble. And so that's that stone finish. And now we move over to the next material. The next material is concrete. So let's see. So first thing we know that the section here, it says same as above. So let me just bring down this note so that we're going to this up each time. And we need to create a rectangle here and a rectangle on the other side too. Just going to transfer this rectangle from there to there, and then put them into the proper layers. Cool. Now, let's go back here now to the image and let's look at what concrete looks like. So when we think of concrete, we can either think of concrete blocks. This is a concrete block here, or we can actually think of concrete, the material which comes out very liquid, then apply it, and then over time it turns into a solid, right? So just let's look at it here. Just concrete here. Someone is actually plastering. That's the concrete material there. in its liquid form as it is then setting, and then it will turn to a solid form. But this is what concrete looks like. All right. Do we have any more images of concrete? Yeah, it is. Yeah, the guy is pouring concrete right there. You can see to create a floor slab. It's better known as reinforced concrete. And you can see the steel bars that the concrete is being poured into. All right, so now let's go back over to AutoCAD. So let's minimize that. It's back up there and bring back at the AutoCAD. So now that's what concrete looks like. So now let's represent this. This is represented with the same small dots that we use similar to stone. And I'm going to put both the materials, the hatch into those boxes, and then I'm going to change them both at the same time. So you already know I'm going to be using something called ARCONC, ARCONC. That's the hatch code. And I'm going to be using 100 scale. We don't have to change the angle because these are dots, so changing the angle wouldn't help anything. So that's it. Concrete there in plan and concrete in elevation. It's the same thing there for that one. Now we move from concrete to concrete block. Now let's look and see what a concrete block looks like. I showed a concrete block just now, but I'll just go over it again. This is what a concrete block looks like. You've probably seen these around. Now let's go back. Yeah, concrete block. Now, how do we represent this? Well, we need to first get a rectangle onto the square. I'm not going to be needing this here, so I'm just going to delete this now because I don't need that. Right, same as plan view. So all we need is two rectangles. So I'm going to reproduce these two rectangles here. I'm going to reproduce them down here. Yeah. And I'm going to put my hatch in there now. This is the brick hatch, which is represented like this. I think we have this pattern. So let's go hatch, close, back in here, go back to pattern. And for that, that pattern is ANSI32. That's the code. That's in. Now, let's move over. And how do we show concrete blocks in elevation? We actually show the blocks like this, and I'm going to just observe this pattern here because this pattern is called the brick bonding pattern. So let's look at that and I'll show you. Let's look here at a set of bricks as they're laid down, and you will see the pattern that we're talking about. This is the brick bonding pattern. And this pattern is designed that the blocks would be laid on top of each other in this specific way to hold the blocks together to create a one big strong unit, so that this will be one wall. This is the pattern which is best used, and it's called brick bonding. All right, so now let's represent this pattern here. Hit for hatch. I can now go to pattern, and I've found my pattern here. I can use either ARB816 or ARB816C. I don't know what's the difference, so I'm just going to go with the first one. And I'm going to change the scale to 100. And I'm just going to change it to 50. I think 50 best represents what I'm trying to achieve. And behind the pattern, we have some dots. So I'm just going to place another pattern onto here so that we can get the dots. That pattern would be, yeah, ARCONC. But I'm going to increase the dots now to 100. I even increase these dots more. 300. Let me try another pattern too. Let me try the AR sun. Oops. Yeah, I think this is a lot more subtle. So I'll rock that pattern. So we have come to the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 materials, and we have them all represented here. So let's just review. We have wood, and I can show you wood. There isn't any plan representation for wood. This floor area left blank. That's exactly, and you just call it up that is a wooden floor. That's what we can do. Elevation is a representation for the siding, the panel, and the section, the framing, and the finish. Okay, brick. We have the representations there for brick. We also have them for stone. We have them for concrete, and we have them for concrete block. Now we're going to take this opportunity to now move on to the next set of materials that we need to explore. So let's see, what's the next one? The next one is earth. And we go down here to earth. You can see this section is blank, so we now have to put it in. And it says here none. So it's none, none, and then there's a pattern at the end. So I can just go straight here, create a rectangle, and all these patterns are placed within rectangles. And we have a pattern for earth, and I use it quite regularly. So I know where to find it. It is, all right, it's called earth, and it's right here. And 300, let's go 2,000, 2,000, it's too large, let's go 1,000. 1,000 looks good, but I'm going to change the angle to 45. Yeah. We'll change this now to 2,000. I think 2,000 is a little better, you're able to see what's going on in there. So I need a note here, so I'm just going to copy this from here, place it there, and then change that to none. And not any. Double click on there and change that to none, N or NE. But there isn't anything going in that column. Now, so that's earth. Now let's go for glass. Glass, just use a line. They have a line, so we just put back a line there that represents glass on plan. Now let us get 2 rectangles. 1, 2, copy them down. Place them there. And let's now place a hatch in here for this one. This particular one, I'm not going to place a hatch. I'm just going to draw it in because you're not going to find a hatch. And I'm going to take off my ortho and I'm just going to draw it in like this. Now I'm going to offset this line above and below offset. So let's say, let's go 50. Let's try 50. What 50 looks like? 50 is too small. Offset 100. All right. And this is the general gist of it. Let's do this. Now I'm going to trim. This is how you represent glass there. So that's the the symbol that I normally use to represent glass there. Fairly simple, fairly easy. So that's glass there. And now let's look for what we would represent glass in section. So I'm going to create a rectangle here. Then we're going to put some lines in it. So I'm going to use the hatch pattern user, and then I'm going to bump it down to 100. Yeah. 150. Yeah, I think that can work. And again, the good thing about this is if you have a pattern, you're not sure, you can always put a label next to the pattern and that usually suffices. So we can put a label here, right? And that will go to large scale. Now, represented by a line, small scale. Small scale glass, and you cut a section through it, large scale, and this is glass in elevation, glass in elevation, glass in plan. All right, so let's move on now. We move from glass to insulation. This note goes down here, and this will go as same as section. So the plan and the section for the insulation is the same as section. Or I could have put there same as plan. But anyway, now let's go to the elevation. We don't have any hatch for elevation because when you look at insulation in an elevation, you won't see any interesting detail. It will just look plain. So I'm just going to put my rectangle here, and I'm going to do what they do. They have the word insulation inside. I'm going to transfer that there, in there, and then just change this to insulation. All right. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Loose, flat, or bottom, and then there's board. Sorry, loose fill or batt, and then there's board. So let's see what's happening. We need to get two rectangles there. Do we have any? Yeah, we have two rectangles already. So I can grab that note there, this note there, copy it, use this as a reference point, and bring that down to here. Cool. Now we'll just change the note. Loose fill or batt, and then this is board. So this pattern down here is fairly easy. It's a series of X's, and we have that. And that would be ANSI 37. The one above that is, we're not going to have that pattern. I can tell you that we just don't have that pattern. No. I've actually never seen that pattern in any hatch menu. I think that's a pattern that you have to create on your own. So let's experiment and create this. So what we know that the top of these patterns are circular. But we know that it comes down here. This is going to be very difficult. I'm just going to try it. Let's see if we can get just the spots going there. right, let me see if we can trim this. Whoa, so I got that. Cool. So I got the pattern. So all I need to do now is to copy this. So this is the general pattern that we're going to be copying around. Huh? And I think I'm going to pull this off. Yeah, so this is a good point to. No. Oops. All right. Let me see, where's a good reference point? I know what I gotta do. I gotta put a point here. So cool. So I want to grab it from that location. CO to copy. And to place a point there, use the word, you type POIN, and that brings it the point menu. All right. I think, are we doing it correctly? That goes up, comes down. Yeah. Okay, so that represents that material there. Not bad, but it doesn't look natural. It doesn't look natural, but it will do the job. Again, there's always a note underneath these materials, so you don't have to worry. If a person can look at the note and see the graphical representation, the graphical representation might not be strong, but the note then tells you everything you need to know. So you look at both, and both actually paint the full picture. That's how I see it. Now, let's move on to the next one, and the next one is plaster. So for that, we're gonna have to shift the screen, put it around to here, and see what it says for plaster. What does it say for plaster? Where is plaster? Okay, yeah. Plaster is right here. It says same as section and elevation. There are going to be a series of dots, and for section, it's going to be a plaster wall, a plaster. Yeah, let's see what they've done there. They've shown the thickness of the plaster, and they have it either as the lath and plaster. So it's a stud. So this is like a plaster wall that they have actually cut through, and they're showing you the thickness of the plaster and how it would look in section. So let's go here and look for plaster as an image. Let's see, how does plaster look? Right here. This is a guy here smoothing a wall and applying plaster onto the wall. So after we have finished applying our concrete, placing the concrete down, then we need to smoothen it. So some people come back and add a layer of plaster, which is same concrete, a thin layer, and just smoothing it down so that the wall is smooth and you won't see all the imperfections or the cracks, or you won't see any unevenness of the material. The reason for applying plaster is it's used to receive the paint. So first you set up your bricks, then you don't want to see, right, some people don't like seeing these lines here, the brick bonding pattern. Well, this is fairly beautiful when you're using these and red bricks. But if you're using these concrete bricks, when you place them and you set them up and you have them bonded, the pattern there isn't that beautiful. it can look quite untidy, and the finish can look tacky if you leave it as a finish. So what happens is people use plaster, apply the plaster to hide these lines. So it just seems as one big mass of material, one big fill of that material. And then after, then you can come back and paint. So the plaster is the layer you put on before you apply paint. So it's like plaster is a layer. All these are just layers. So it's the brick, one layer, then the plaster, second layer, then you apply the paint, the third layer, which is the finish. So plaster is a layer you would apply before placing paint onto your surface. Now, so it says here, same as section, so I can bring down this note. Same as section for this one. I'm going to bring down this rectangle. And over here, we need, so I'm going to copy this rectangle over. And then I'm going to use that as base. I think I'm going to stretch this in because too much on this side. You don't need it to be so long. Okay. So that's stretched in. So I'm going to label that lath, L-A-T-H, lath, and plaster. Lath and plaster. Let me just center this. I'm conscious that this is not centered. Oh, that's a little better. Now, plaster material goes in here, just a series of dots. So we can use something like air sand, A-R-S-A-N-D, to represent the plaster. And I want these dots out of the, you know what, we use some dots already right here. So I can just go back to where we use. No, I'm just going to create a 200. I think 200 is good. 200 is good. We come over here, we place the same dots there. Dots there. All right. We bring down this word and we call that stud. Stud walls. Let me place this into my outline layer before I go. This and this too needs to be outlined there before we proceed. All right, so that's plaster in, and we move on now to structural steel. Structural steel, let's see, what does this look like? Now, it's just a line, then there's a dot, there's a flat line. That line here, and this line is represented. So if I want to change the properties by touching the line and then right clicking and going to properties, and I'm going to change the line type from continuous, and I am going to look for, what line am I looking for to represent this? I'm looking for a dash. I'm going to use the phantom 2. And I'm going to change the scale to 100. Yeah, 100 works. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put this line as dashed. Yeah, and then I'm going to change this to 100 as well. 100 doesn't work there for that, so I'm going to change it to 1000. 1000 works, but I don't want not many dashes in my line. So what do we do? I'm going to change it to hidden and then change the scale to 5. Change it to 1000. Yeah, we'll leave it there like that. And it has here indicated by note, as in the elevation. So what does that mean is that there isn't any representation there. Again, the note wins. So having the correct note, the correct annotation, someone will be able to identify that on the elevation, we're using steel, structural steel on the elevation. So it's indicated by elevation. And this is something, sorry, indicated by note on the elevation. This is something that you need to get familiar with. Not everything is represented by a hatch. All right. So again, we're going to remove this because we don't need that. And we need to create this L piece. As you see, I'm not really using any dimensions. I'm just freestyling this because I just want to represent it. I don't want to waste too much time here. So yeah, now I'm just going to create my nice, lovely I beam here. Now one thing I realize is that this isn't even, so not a problem, not a problem. I'm going to mirror this. So I'm going to find the halfway line here in my mirror, and over here, and over there is mirrored by that. Erase source object, no. So just erase this and that, and then we have, oops. We have the full I-beam. All right, let me just trim off in here. Okay. Good. So now let's represent this by placing a hatch in here. So what hatch pattern can we place in here? Let me just close this off so I can see my hatch patterns. And we're gonna need ANSI, or I think we can work with ANSI 34. Yeah, perfect, perfect. It goes in there, and that's the steel. Let me see if, what scale is this? 100? Let's try 200. I think 200 is a little better. You're able to see. Not quite sure if I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'll go with ANSI 32. Yeah. Yeah, that's. Do this quickly, and then grab these, and then put them back in. Yeah. So that's structural steel. That's what it looks like in section, indicated by note for elevation, and for plan, it's represented by a line and a dash, and then there's a line and a dash underneath it. From time to time, you guys will get familiar seeing these around when you're looking at drawings. So don't worry about this too much now. Now let's move on. So we have finished page 1, sheet 1 and sheet 2, and we move on to sheet 3. And we have here sheet metal flashing. So what happens? Indicated by note, so that's nothing there. So we can just replace this down here, indicated by note. Just put that in there. And this next thing looks like a barcode. So that should be easy to remember, or easy to replicate. Looks like a barcode. All right, so we need a rectangle. That's the first thing, REC. Put that there. What's the pattern we're gonna use? I can think of a pattern. I could think we can use user and then just change the angle from 0 to 90 degrees. That goes up, and change the scale to 100. Yeah, and I'm satisfied with that. That's my barcode effect. And then it has a show contour. Alpha line, and let's just get this in over here. Take off my ortho so I can give this a slight angle. Yeah, and that's it. Now what I'm going to do for this particular one is, now I'm going to leave it and then just put the note there. So show a contour, and I just remember I didn't show you guys what flashing looks like. So let me just go back there after I place the note, and I can show you what flashing looks like. Sheet metal flashing, right? This is it here. Sheet metal flashing, as we can see. And where is this used? This is used on windows or on roofs, whereas two materials are joined and we want to seal the material. So for example, brick and the concrete, the brick down here and the concrete is joined, and we don't want any water or any moisture to get in between the cracks. So sheet metal is placed so to allow water to run smoothly off from one material to another material without settling into the joints. So that's what sheet metal is there for. Sometimes you say on roofs too. If you are constructing a flat roof, where the parapet wall midline or the actual roof slab, right, you would have a sheet metal just to allow the water to flow off without settling into the cracks or into the corners where the water tends to settle, and then it can actually erode the detail. So that's what sheet metal is used for, all right? So the next thing we need to represent is tiles. Right, tiles. Let's look for tiles now. Create my rectangle. And I'm going to, okay. So I need to create a rectangle. I need to create a shape. Sorry. I need to create a shape that I can write a note underneath the shape. So let me see. Yeah, so I'm going to work with this shape here. Copy it over. And then what I'm going to do is just going to expand this shape like that to the right, like that. So let's look here. So for floor, what does this look like when you look down on plan? Let me just bring the note closer to the center. I always do that just for better organization, you know, so it looks and it reads better, and for consistency too. That's why I do that. Okay, cool. Floor. Just put in a hatch pattern here. And we need some squares. So there's a pattern that has squares. Net. That's what it's called. NET, net. Can we go there? Of course, I need to put this to probably 1,000. Ooh, 1,000 isn't even good enough. 2000. So I'm going to work with 2000. Yeah. And I'm going to transfer the same pattern over here. I'll call it wall. Wall and floor. All right. And then how would this look like in section? Grab this, slide that by here. So how would this look like in sections? So let's zoom in here and see what we have here. I'm going to offset 50. Let's see. Just draw a line. Just draw a line. And then let me get my pattern and put it in between here. So what pattern can I place in there that could actually truly represent what's going on? Park. I'm looking to see where I can find this would have to do and get out of here and go to the next one. I'll rock this pattern, call it a day. That's what it will look like in section. Porous fill, let's look for that. And this is what it looks like. That's the material representation there. And where is it used? Where is some sort of a fill that you use to cover up surfaces or to actually bring the land level so that you can actually get a flat surface to walk on or to live on. So I guess this is some sort of a batt fill. So now let us go back here and represent this. And it has none, and then it has a little bit of rebel here. So I'm just going to bring down this note and change that to none. Change this also to none. I'll copy this over. And then create a rectangle here, which is really a square that I want. And I'm going to put some rocks in there or some sort of like gravel looking pattern. So I'm looking for either AR con or AR sand. I'll go with AR con. And I am going to put that at 1,100, no, 1,000. 100. Yeah, I think 100 will work. It's good enough. That's porous fill. Some form of a fill I guess it could be seen as like hardcore, whereas you'll be backfilling the foundation. More on that later on. Let's now move on to plywood, indicated by note for both the plan and the elevation. And yes, I got to show you guys what plywood looks like, indicated by note for both the plan and elevation. And I think this is where this particular hatch, I don't know where we're going to get this hatch from. So let me just check and see what hatches we have here available. I think we're going to have to make this hatch, or at least part of it is going to be made, and the other part we can use user. So let me just use what we have here. So we put user in there. I'm going to change the angle here to 90, sorry, to 0. And the size I'm going to put at 100. Oh, 100 is too much. It's too little. Let's go 500. I'll probably go 300. 300 looks good. And now I'm going to use SPL spline and create these wavy lines in here. Then I'm going to hatch them. Not hatch them, I'm going to trim them. The ones that go outside. Oops, so that's 1, 9 represented there. 2. Like I said, these patterns, these lines I'm drawing are fairly random. I think that looks good. Trim. See, so you don't waste much time with these things. You just, if you don't have a pattern, you create your own and you move on with life. Basically. All right, so that looks good there. So that's plywood, and we now move to batt insulation. Let me just move this away from here. This is what we need in that. And we move from plywood and we go now over to this last column here, which is batt insulation. Now, remember that strange looking pattern? We're going to be using that batt for batt insulation. And let me show you what batt insulation looks like. And I don't think I showed you what plywood looks like. So let me just show you both plywood and batt insulation. This is plywood. It is a smaller, it is wood. And the thickness is smaller than normal wood. Look at the thicknesses here. We have the various thicknesses that it comes in. This is the thinnest, and this is the largest sheet of plywood. I think they move from 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. But don't quote me on that. You would have to research what's the smallest size of plywood you can actually go into a store and buy. All right. And what else I have to show you here before we leave and go back to the drawing screen? I think I was to show you some insulation. Is it batt insulation? Just let me check here again. Yeah, batt insulation. I don't have anything down here, so I'm just going to go to Google and type in batt insulation and see what happens there. Oh, I do have that. I do have that. And let's go back to Google. Yeah, better. This is the batt insulation here. And you can see this guy is laying it down. So you have your studs and they're laid in between the studs, in between the wood supports. And it's like a big mattress, you know. That's one way I could describe it. Like a thick mattress that is just stuffed into the pieces of wood. Yeah, it is. And then when it's placed in there, what happens is then you will come back and place gypsum board and you will seal that off. So you would, the house will look like that with all the insulation in there. And the reason why you have insulation is to keep the temperature on the inside warm, so that if outside is cold, when you are on the inside of the building, it's going to be warm. The insulation helps to regulate the temperature. But we don't want to see, as we walk into the house, be seeing the insulation. So then we are going to come back, and then we are going to place gypsum board over the insulation, and then we are going to paint the gypsum board. So let's have a look at the gypsum board that's being placed over the insulation. That's it here. So once the insulation is installed, as you can see in the background there, the yellow material, gypsum board is in place, it's sealed, and then it's painted. Or after the gypsum board is placed, then you might have a light, you might plaster it, and then you will paint it so it will look very smooth, very even, and no one will be able to see how the wall has been composed. You will just see the final finish, which is a clean painted wall. But that's the process that it goes through. So we know what that batt insulation looks like now. So let's get back to drawing. All right, batt insulation. And as I said, I am going to be using back this pattern. It took me ever so long to draw. Yeah, it's not even wasting that time. All right, with batt insulation. None and same as planned. So this doesn't really have an elevational look, and it's the same as planned the section. So I'm gonna place that back there, right? And just click here and then put here same as planned. Cool. So now we go to rigid insulation. Now it's just a different form of insulation, but they're all the same insulation now. It's just represented different. Right? So I'm going to create a rectangle here, and then we're going to use the hatch. I think we can use net or yeah, use net. No, there's something called ensue here. So I think let's try this out, see what happens. Nah, that doesn't give me the pattern that I'm looking for. So let's go out the net so we don't waste any much time. And now let us move, let's bump this up to about 2000. Yeah, leave it there. Then same as planned and none. So grab these two notes. I'll copy the main place one time. Okay. Now, after that, we will skip glass here because we have done glass already. So glass repeated itself on this diagram. So we'll skip glass and we'll go to gypsum wall board. And I just explained gypsum wall board, but I can go over it again. This is the gypsum wall board here, which is used to seal the insulation, to keep the insulation in, and also to hide the insulation. And the gypsum wall board is what you'll be applying your final finish onto. So that while you're inside your house, you can actually reach out and touch the gypsum wall board rather than touch the insulation. All right, so that's the gypsum wall board there. Let's get to that now. So that's represented. So we're going to draw that and then, okay. So we draw a rectangle first. Draw a line here. And I want to mirror this line to make sure it's even. Erase or subject, no. And I'm going to be placing a hatch pattern in here. And the pattern that we're going to be placing in there is we're going to place some dots. So I'm going to use AR sand. And I'm going to put this scale at 100. 100. How about that? How about 200? 200 looks good. 200.
And I'm going to just trim this now. Right? That's the representation for the plan. Now for elevation, REC, draw a rectangle there, or can I bring a rectangle now? I'll just grab one of these rectangles. Actually, I'm going to grab, yeah, just grab the rectangle, not the pattern. And that's it. Yep. And same as planned. So this is the same as planned. All right. Let me just change these outlines. Well, we're there. Now, so we're soon finished. Let's go to acoustical, better known as acoustic ceiling tiles. Let's see what that looks like. You would mainly find this in offices. That's the acoustical or the acoustic ceiling tile there. That's what it looks like. And you can see it's there represented to it's a ceiling material. That's it. You mainly find this in offices. You wouldn't find this in many homes. You don't finish homes with this finish, but that's it there. And let's go back now to placing this in. Let's see how do we represent this now in AutoCAD or in a drawing? Well, first thing, you need a rectangle. So I'm going to bring this down. Copy this rectangle, seal for copy. Bring down the rectangle, 8 for hatch, bring the hatch menu, put in a pattern in there, search for the pattern. And now I'm looking for some big squares, big rectangles. So I think I'm going to have to use the net and increase the scale to something about 5,000. Let's just leave it there. And let's go now. None for that. And this particular one, this is a bit technical here. So they're actually showing you what happens when two ceiling tiles meet. So I'm going to be drawing that now. Rectangle. Let me just draw a rectangle here. Explode the rectangle. Explode means it's a group. And now these are all 4 lines now, 4 individual lines. That's why I explode, because I'm going to be tampering with this group. Right? I'm going to be, I want to have access to all the lines individually rather than as a group. So now let us offset 50. Now let's go with a bigger number, like 200. Yeah. Then offset 100. And then offset, yeah, 100. 100. No. Cool. Good. Yeah. Good. All right, so I think I've got the tiles in. So now I need to create the support, right? And this is going to be a T. Am I to mirror? No, do not ever remove the source object. And just see that in there and voila. And how does that look? How is my drawing? Sorry. I think this is a bit too thick, so I'm just going to bring this in. My mirror. No. Fill it, join the two of those together. And fill it up there. Cool. So I think we got it there. Now let us hatch in here, and I'm going to hatch in there as a solid. And the solid is the first hatch right there. It's a solid fill. And now we need to get these lines in. So how do I get this line? Man, no, I can just draw a line. I know what I got to do. I got to divide the surface. Divide, and let's go three divisions. 3 divisions here. Going to go up. Copy this now. Copy that. Copy that. Then divide it here. Divide and put 4. Just do that. Copy this now. I think that looks good. And then mirror the whole thing. No, don't reduce the moving source object. And that is that there. All right. Let me just end it here so that it will be touching. Okay, so that's been represented. Probably was the most challenging thing to do for the day in terms of represent that material. Now let's move on now to ceramic wall tiles. So what are ceramic tiles? Ceramic tiles, these are ceramic tiles here. There's ceramic wall tiles, and then there's ceramic floor tiles. These are the floor tiles. Right down here, as a person stepping out of a washroom, you step onto this mat, and then from the mat, then you step onto the ceramic tiles. Right, so those are what ceramic tiles look like. You see them in lots of residences, so it's something most people should be familiar with. They don't spend too much time there on that. So now let's go now to this now. How's it going to do that? REC. Create that rectangle. Hatch. Think I know which hatch part I'm going to use. I'm going to use ANSI 31. Change that down to about 200. Oh, no. 1,000. 1,000 is good. Yeah. Same as plan, and I know what part I'm going to use here for this one. You put user in there. And we adjust the scale. Let's go 500. 350. Cool. And we bring down the note, same as plan for the elevation, right? Sorry, for the section. And then there is the floor tile now. Let's see now for the floor tile, what are we gonna have here? We can actually get this, copy that there, and then there's going to be none, so you can copy that there down to none. There's not going to be any representation for elevation, and remove this title bar here. So that's deleted, and match pattern. Like I said, we can use net. Use net patterns. Net. We start with 1,000. 2,000. Okay, 2,000 is good. Floor tiles. Yeah. And now REC. Yeah. Explode. Now let's go divide. Divide the surface by, divide it by 6. So now we're going to copy this. Then I'm going to array, and I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. I'm going to do that. I want 6. So let's do it over. So you have a copy. You have an array, and I want 6 pieces. Yeah, good. So let's copy and array at the same time. You get all 6 pieces in there. So that's probably the last thing here before we wrap up this tutorial. And again, what was this tutorial about? This tutorial was about material indication symbols. So when a person looks, they're able to see what the materials, how the materials are represented by the symbols. So before we finish, we would have another one to this where we look at the doors, the windows, the plumbing symbols, and the appliance symbols. So we're going to be looking at the appliance symbols, the plumbing symbols, the doors, and the windows in another tutorial. So that's what we are going to be looking at the next time we look at this topic. And I have it all here set up so that we can then just go through that. But for right now, what we did today, we looked at the materials symbols. We looked at wood, brick, stone, concrete block, earth, glass, insulation, plaster, structural steel, sheet metal flashing, tile, porous fill, plywood, batt insulation, rigid insulation, gypsum wall board, acoustical, ceramic wall tile, and floor tile. Those are what we looked at, and we also looked at what they will look. Sorry, I also showed you what these will look like in reality, and then we turn reality into symbols. So that's what we did today. So for example, we looked at wood. When I said wood, what do we mean? I came here and I showed you what a piece of wood looks like. And then I went back here and I show you how to represent this symbolically and on an AutoCAD drawing for both the plan, the elevation, and the section. So we did this for all these materials. This brings us to the end of this tutorial. It was a fairly long tutorial, but I want to encourage y'all to make it a poster and print it and learn these symbols. These symbols will actually help you to enhance your drawing and communicate better to your audience when you're drawing in AutoCAD. All right, that was it. And that's it for me here. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was a long tutorial, so please take this in chunks. Don't try to absorb it all one time. Anyway, I am out.